Welcome, welcome Africa. Good morning to our friends in Lagos. Good afternoon to our friends in Kenya and East Africa. Salam, happy Ramadan to our friends in North Africa. And for the rest of us in French Africa and South Africa, it's an awesome opportunity to be speaking to you today. We have approximately 1,000 odd customers and partners that are with us today. This is one of many security summits as Checkpoint Africa we have hosted and will continue to host. Today's agenda in particular, or today's topic, is focused on cloud. So very excited to have a very strong panel of speakers that will share with you what we believe is, to some extent, best practice around cloud security. I was in Botswana earlier this week, spending some time with customers and partners. I'm the regional director of Checkpoint Africa, and it was very enlightening to listen to customers tell me about, I guess, their strategies, their plans, their challenges around moving to the cloud and how to secure that. Lots of big buzzwords are floating around today. We hear things like SD-WAN, we hear things like SASE, egress, if I can say some of those words, Kubernetes, container security. So what we're going to do today is almost at the lowest level of maturity, break that up for you, and then take you to the highest level of maturity and give you an idea of how the optimum environment for security could be for organizations like yourself. I'd like now to also advise you that in our room over here in Johannesburg, we have Nomata Anderson, who will be one of the presenters. Like I said, we're live from the Fourways office. And alongside me, Marianne, who is the field marketing manager, who will also be co-hosting the session today. So without further ado, let me take you through to some of the housekeeping rules and the agenda for today. What you'll notice is we have the Q&A facility on the Zoom session. Please use that please use that as an opportunity to share with us any questions that you have. Our goal is to have each presenter present their content, and at the end is then to share with you those questions and to have them present answers in that manner. That panel will be hosted by Isam, who you'll hear about very shortly. The session is recorded, and certainly it will be shared with each one of you post the event. As I mentioned earlier, the agenda is made up of a number of experts or speakers, 4 in particular. So we'll kick off one very shortly. As I mentioned, Nomata is with me here in Johannesburg, and he'll be coming across very shortly to talk to you. Followed by him is Richard, who is based in the UK, and he is responsible for our cloud business across Africa. And he'll obviously be talking very general about where we've seen companies in terms of their maturity levels across the continent. We then have Stuart Green as well from the UK, talking to us about security posture management, a very hot topic across most customers. And last but not least is Justice, who is based in Lagos, who is also one of our security experts based on the continent. And then, as I mentioned, we'll end off with the Meet the Experts with Isam. So without further ado, I'm now going to hand over to Nomata Anderson. Nomata, over to you, and I'll be back very shortly after his presentation to take you through to the next sessions.
Thank you, Pankaj. Thank you, Pankaj, for the introduction, and welcome to our Africa Cloud Summit. Nomata Anderson here, speaking from Johannesburg office. I'm the security we will actually, we are presenting the consolidated single management console proposition, and we hope and to to make sure that we give you the best in terms of how to manage your security across all platforms and across all security. Next slide. So, the vision for us as Checkpoint as a company is to make sure that we give you the best of security. And with our Checkpoint Infinity, the idea is to make sure that our customers can secure their everything. You notice that with the digital transformation, obviously accelerated by the coronavirus pandemic as well, a lot of people are actually moving into the cloud. There's a lot of applications that are actually moving into the cloud. And another thing is there's a proliferation of a lot of devices on our networks. So the idea for Checkpoint is to make sure that we give you a consolidated architecture, looking at security from an architectural point of view, to give you an architecture that secures your everything from a single pane of glass. And all that will be based on the foundational issue of management, which is what we'll be talking and presenting on today. You will notice that, everything is changing and everything is connected. You will realize, most of you actually will agree with me on this point, that our data centers and applications are moving and are everywhere. We are moving from what we're used to or accustomed to, from traditional data centers, from centrally managed branch offices, from three-tier monolithic applications, from all on-premise applications, and we're moving from what we've been accustomed to and what we could secure to what is called hybrid public multi-cloud, and also moving from on-premise applications to cloud-hosted applications, from three-tier monolith to applications that are hosted basically everywhere. Can we move on to the next slide? So the idea that we are actually doing as a company at the moment is, besides just giving you a consolidated view, we give you the best of security as well. So this is what we are doing next. All right. So managing security has never been easier, but it has actually been made even more complex by a lot more devices that are coming onto our networks. People moving to the cloud, obviously, like I mentioned earlier, accelerated by the digital transformation. More and more applications are being deployed by DevOps people into the cloud. And managing that has been super complex. And how does security keep pace with our, with the migration that is happening? So there's a few propositions that we are making as a company that I actually need to make today. We are in a digital era of hyperconnectivity, where our networks continue to grow and expand in all directions. The threat landscape itself continues to become more and more sophisticated. There is increase in remote workers, business are going mobile, infrastructure and security is no longer on our premises physically like we've known. So we need to give you a proposition of how do we manage this. And there's obviously 4 pillars that I'll focus on today. And throughout the presentation that I'm making, I'm going to expand on this basically 4 pillars. The first pillar for us is to automate security and integrate it into a CI/CD pipeline. As we deploy applications to keep pace with business demand, to be competitive in the business landscape, we need to also make sure that our security doesn't lag behind. So we integrate the security into our CI/CD pipeline, from securing the code up until the application is actually deployed. So that is the first proposition that we make, so that the deployment process is orchestrated and the operation process is efficient as well. Consolidated to enable efficiency. This is done so that we can reduce our CapEx and OpEx. There is a big problem across all continents and across the world, whereby we've got a shortage of employees. So to leverage that, what we have done, and our proposition is simple, to consolidate everything, have a single pane of glass that manages everything, and we have fewer and fewer resources that can manage all the platforms that we have. That reduces our operational expenditure. The dynamic nature of our cloud actually makes us that we need to make sure that we've got agility and we are keeping a pace with the ever-evolving demands in cybersecurity space. Efficient operations so that the cybersecurity management does not slow down the pace of the changes that we're experiencing in the digital world. So basically, as my presentation going forward will zero in on these 4 principles. The idea is there is need for us to actually have a new cybersecurity platform that is consolidated and that can help us all manage all these devices. And the key to reducing that complexity is obviously consolidation, which is my proposition today. As Checkpoint, we have a single management platform, a cybersecurity platform that we believe is for the future. The industry's first cybersecurity platform with autonomous threat prevention. That will help us within this proposition. As customers do and migrate to the cloud, spearheaded by the digital transformation, we need to help them do that with confidence. Because out of a survey that was done with a lot of CISOs across the world, security has always been the showstopper. So what we are proposing for you is to make sure that we have a unified security that is automated everywhere. So this is the proposition that makes it easier for a lot of people to cloud with confidence. Our security platform is basically based on 2 principles. And one of them is actually simplicity. Simplicity is actually based on the foundation that we have a single unified policy that manages our everything. The next principle that we based our management platform on is obviously consolidation. We have more than 80 security services that will make sure that we consolidate and have a single management platform that manages everything. This brings about simplicity and lowers our CapEx and OpEx in many ways. Simplicity as well in threat management and giving you that visibility that you need. So, as far as managing our security solutions are concerned, we need to have a proper managing and threat prevention policy that everything at the moment takes a lot of time to manually do everything as far as our threat prevention is concerned. So our management makes that easier, consolidate and automates everything for you. This, for me, I think the MITRE ATT&CK has been adopted by all the Fortune 500 companies in terms of how we investigate our threats. So MITRE ATT&CK for us has been integrated into our management platform, and this consolidated view of MITRE techniques within our management actually helps us to identify and actually investigate this threat. Checkpoint management is one single policy that manages everything. So we have to be able to manage our security. We need to be able to manage our clouds, whether it's multi-clouds, private cloud, and hybrid cloud. We need to be able to manage all this with using a single consolidated view. And we need to be able also to manage all the other applications. With the digital transformation, there's been a lot of remote users that are working remotely. We've got a lot of applications that have been moved onto the cloud to optimize user experience. Our data is everywhere, basically. So we need to have a single platform that can manage everything for us to make sure that, and gives us that visibility that reduces the efforts that our security administrator takes to manage our everything. So, having said that, we need to have a superior management, and we need to make sure that we have got visibility for everything. If we cannot see anything, this is a security principle. If you cannot see it, we cannot secure it. So our vision is to actually give you a consolidated view of all the assets that you have, all the users that you're managing, all the applications, devices, all the clouds, but whether be it private, hybrid, or multi-cloud, to give you a single management console that gives you that visibility and gives you superior management so that everything is actually simpler for your security administrators. Having said that, our new cyber attack dashboard that helps you find a needle in a haystack. So this makes your investigation easier and easier as you have everything within a single dashboard and a single console. So we need to, what actually this dashboard gives us is real-time forensics, just being able to investigate and find everything easier, because I think it helps our administrators to make their jobs easier. Single view into security risk. Respond to security incidents immediately. This is what our single dashboard basically gives us, because I mean, out of all the devices, 80 security services that you have, your single platform, that basically helps you to have a view of not only your millions of logs, but a view of all the incidences that you have within your environment. Integration increases efficiency as well. So we need to be able to manage everything from a single pane, and being able to manage all our services, users, and manage everything consolidated. Integration, like I said, easier access to our logs, easier visibility to our users as they work across the remotely from wherever they are. This is a statement that I've said, and I'll always say it again. The security of our users wherever they are it has to be consistent with the security that we have on the parameter. So our security as an organization, or your security as an organization, is as good as the security of the people as they work remotely. So admin concurrency is one of the strengths that we actually bring with our management platform, just to make sure that we have different users working to address the security concerns and security needs, whether updating your security policies, but we can have actually multiple administrators. One will work at one room and the next will work on the different room. And we have actually measures in place or techniques in place that we have to make sure that all our users will not work on a single policy. And this will, if you see on my screen now, you see that as one user or admin works on one policy, it locks that rule such that the next admin doesn't work necessarily on the same rule. And as the next user works on the next rule, what happens is it locks that rule as well, so that the other admin actually will not be allowed to work on that rule. And after having done this, if you publish, all the other admins have access and visibility to the changes that has been done. So this makes it actually easier for us to work on the same policy and actually install the policy at the same time after multiple admins have actually worked on that rule base. And we can't emphasize enough the issue of a single view into security risks. This makes the remediation process easier. I know our platforms makes automated remediation, but to have that single view and be quicker in terms of remediating the risks that we have. Obviously, integrating the MITRE ATT&CK into this view helps us to actually follow those threats in a methodical way to make sure that we can alleviate those risks. Zero maintenance gives IT admin more control, security, and makes it easier for them to manage their environment. The proposition for us is to reduce your operational expenditure, and this makes sure that your admins focus on the work that they're actually supposed to do. Maintenance is actually done automatically with our systems. So that frees at least a lot of time for them to focus on the vision of the company and to improve the operational flows of the business itself. Faster event management and reports operation. Actually up to 50% performance improvement in generating events and reports. This is critical for every organization, basically, to be able to report and generate your reports in a fast and efficient way. And this actually makes it quite seamless and very intuitive as well. The other thing is we actually query. There is 25% acceleration rate in terms of how we carry our security within our environment. Simplicity in connectivity and management. We need your management has to be simple, so we need to enable our DevOps people to integrate and make sure everything is automated as well. Part of what we have included within our management platform is to just make sure that there is automatically updatable objects. I'll speak this in relation with our with our public cloud environment. For instance, if a DevOps people now can actually deploy applications within the cloud and doesn't have to worry about security, because that security is automated. We actually use tags within the cloud to make sure that when DevOps people deploy applications seamlessly into the cloud, they are immediately secured. And there's no need for us basically to go back to the security people to make sure that they can secure our cloud. So another thing, another proposition for us is basically simple management administration. We need to make sure that the administration of our security is as simple as it can get. One thing that I always sort of joke about is what we call in the security space as engineers, the agony meter. Basically what that entails is how much agony do you have to go through to just create a simple policy, to just be able to install your policy, and how much time does it take to do that? How many mouse clicks do you basically have to go through to create a single policy, or for instance to block Facebook or allow a specific application in your security environment? So the new changes that we've done makes this easier, makes the reporting easier, makes tracking easier, makes monitoring easier, makes basically everything easier. So management, ACE of management is key and central to our security management platform. Yeah. So another proposition that we make is with Checkpoint R80 cybersecurity platform, we basically give you the highest level of security that is automated, and automated threat prevention profiles. Another thing that we propose as well, and that comes with a new management profile, is rapid response to changing security needs with faster policy installation, maybe 50% faster or 90% faster than what we have done in the past. We make sure that we also automate security performance within the R80 environment, operational security traffic as well, with support for the latest TLS 1.3 and HTTPS version 2. These are some of the quotes basically from independent vendors and some of our customers. So I'll name just a few as I head towards the conclusion of my presentation. This is according to Ted Ponto. Checkpoint R81 basically presents for them, gives us accelerated policy installation, one-click upgrade, the power to simultaneously upgrade our security gateways. I think one of the use cases that we've had is where a single company upgraded 99 gateways within a matter of 2 hours, which is work that was basically supposed to be done, a project managed, I think, in 2 weeks or so. They had to do that process within 2 hours because that's a single click upgrade. We had already been using Checkpoint Infinity threat prevention profiles, so the new automatic policy deployment feature in R81 will save us time, reduce the risk of configuration errors, and enables continuous updates, say Todd. So this is what the proposition is about, to give us, to basically present us with less time to do everything that we have been doing on a day-to-day basis. DC analyst, basically the quote was, managing IT security today is hard because more devices, I spoke about the proliferation of a lot of devices on our networks with IoT devices, and billions of devices are actually basically connected on the network today. So we need to have speed and spread access across data center network and multiple clouds. To keep up enterprises needs consistent security policies, unified threat management, automation to prevent the latest security threats. So So basically, the proposition that we have is to help you cloud with confidence. Like I mentioned earlier, a lot of CISOs has said security has been a showstopper for them and has prevented a lot of people to migrate applications to the cloud and to move on to the public cloud. So Checkpoint's proposition is to help you do that with confidence.
Thank you, Nomet.
All right.
Thank you, Nometa. And I must say, huge thanks for all the questions that are flooding through on the chat service. Really appreciate that. Looks like everybody understands how to use the tool, which is great. So as I said earlier, our intention is to have the Q&A at the end. It will be hosted via panel, so all the speakers will be asked to return. And Issam, who is our security engineer leader across the continent based in Morocco, will be hosting that panel. So team, or rather listeners and audience, over to our next speaker. You heard from Nometa. Nometa is one of the security engineers or cloud experts based in Africa. We have a team of approximately 50 people across the continent that are responsible for providing services to customers and partners like yourself. And Nometa is one of those. But we also have a large contingent of resources across the globe that support us here in Africa. And in this particular case, we have Richard, who is based in the UK, who is not only an evangelist, but to some extent, our cloud go-to person on the continent too. So I know that Richard has been urging to come to South Africa, often talks about Table Mountain, but we've given him an invite to go to Lagos to see the wonderful bridge that crosses from mainland to the island. So Richard, welcome and thank you once again for talking to our customers and partners on the continent.
Well, thank you so much, Pankaj, for that introduction. Good morning, good afternoon, everybody. My name's Richard Flanders. As Pankaj said, I look after the cloud business in Africa. Great to be here, great to be involved in this summit. What I'd like to talk about today is really following on from the thoughts and information that Nometa has just presented to you. I'm going to talk about the concepts behind some of the cloud security tools that are available today from Checkpoint. Industries, including finance, including government sector, etc., etc. So let me start by reiterating the situation. We've moved from this model of traditional data centers, centrally managed branch offices, three-tier applications, monolithic applications that exist for a long time and are managed by a very specific set of people, and on-premise applications held within a data center and managed again by a specific group of individuals. But now we've seen a movement through to hybrid and public cloud usage. That is a mixture of public and private cloud and pure public cloud deployments that is replacing a lot of those on-premise applications and monolithic applications that the customer was previously using. We now have remote offices connecting directly to the cloud to access their data and their applications. We're seeing customers using containers and serverless-based microservices within the cloud on a regular basis to try and streamline the amount of resource that they're actually using. And then from an on-premise apps situation, we've now moving slowly but surely, or rather quite rapidly and surely, to SaaS applications. That is, those applications used online Office 365, Salesforce, all of those good things used online regularly by our customers to facilitate their businesses. And we've gone from a period of slow release cycles, that is, applications being developed very slowly, to a scenario where applications are delivered very quickly by DevOps teams within our customers. So iterations of an application being released very readily, very quickly, sometimes within the space of a few minutes, being released into the environment and needing to be secured. And indeed, from a path perspective, if you will, it really boils down to four things. This is the four stages, if you will, that Checkpoint sees within the cloud environment. We start off with deploying network security and threat prevention, deploying security posture management, that is the ability to look forensically into the posture of a cloud deployment to ensure that it's secure and to be sure that any issues with configuration are not causing a threat to the data or the applications. Thirdly, we have application security. So, as I said before, we have modern applications built on microservices within the cloud, be that containers, be that specific cloud-specific operation within the fabric of the cloud itself. And then finally, we have the ability now to look at threats from an AI perspective, that is using artificial intelligence to hunt threats within the cloud deployment and bring them to the customer's awareness before they cause an issue within that infrastructure, that cloud infrastructure. But we have to do all of this at the speed of DevOps. And it means that as more applications become available, as they are published very quickly, we need to be able to protect them at the same speed, but also with the same level of security that we are traditionally doing within the data center and the standard internal infrastructure. So we have some disparate suggestions or some disparate questions, if you will, that really focus down on the issues that a lot of our customers are seeing when they're trying to protect their cloud. Security at scale. I need to deploy multi-layer security across all my cloud environments. I need to do that at speed. I can't keep up with the rapid changes of my cloud applications. So things are being spun up, spun down within the cloud. They are coming into existence sometimes for only a very short space of time. Very, very difficult to keep up with the changes within that cloud environment unless you have a tool designed to do that. And lastly, the security everywhere piece. I need a consistent security approach to all my cloud environments. So if the customer happens to be running multi-cloud, say, for example, in the public cloud space, they're using AWS, they're using Azure, they're using Google Cloud, then a consistent security approach is required across all those clouds in order to maintain a consistent security posture. This is almost impossible to do with a static security model that we used to rely on in terms of hardware, software appliances within the data center, applying their security in the traditional way. We can't use that model within the context of cloud because that cloud is changing all the time. Different services are coming online, different applications are being spun up, spun down. We must have security that adapts, and we call it adaptive security, that adapts to changes that are taking place all the time within the environment. And we must do this at speed and scale. So if we look at the cycle, if we follow the arrows around the cycle, we look at starting with workloads, we employ policies to protect those workloads. We look at our posture in terms of the security posture of the cloud deployment. We apply prevention techniques, and we deploy those applications into the DevOps environment so they can be republished into the multi-cloud spectrum, and then the cycle begins again. And we need, across that whole cycle, to apply automated security everywhere. You cannot do this as a manual task. You need a tool which can keep up with the speed of change within that cycle. So, a unified cloud-native security platform. And what does that actually mean from a Checkpoint perspective? Well, three things. Firstly, high-fidelity security context. That is the ability to pick up the slightest issue that might cause a cloud deployment to become insecure. The ability to feed back information and manage and monitor that information in a very forensic way to ensure that we deliver the second element, which is advanced prevention. The whole ethos of Checkpoint is to prevent issues causing a problem before they can properly attack the infrastructure, be it cloud or be it traditional. So we're trying to prevent attacks being successful rather than simply alerting the customer to the fact that there has been a breach, successful or otherwise. And then thirdly, to make up the circle, is the CI/CD and DevOps piece. In other words, being able to scan code as it's written within a DevOps environment to make sure that that code is secure before it is deployed in the runtime environment into the infrastructure. So the ability, if you wish, to second guess any problems that might occur when that code is deployed live and being able to remediate those issues before they actually occur in the runtime environment. So, applying advanced prevention across any cloud and any workload. No good just protecting part of your cloud deployment. There has to be a concerted effort to protect every piece of that cloud, the cloud that you're using, be that public or private cloud. High fidelity security, end-to-end context. Everything is monitored, everything is managed, everything is checked for its security status. And finally, DevOps and automation. Shift left security is what I was just saying around applying scanning to code before it is deployed into a working environment. All of those three things, when brought together in one solution set, provide for the ultimate protection of any cloud environment. Again, from Checkpoint's perspective, this breaks down into a number of different solutions. Cloud network threat prevention. This is the ability to virtualize gateways within a cloud environment and manage them and deploy them in exactly the same way as you would traditionally deploy and manage a hardware software appliance within a data center. These effectively, cloud network gateways are effectively exactly the same thing as a hardware appliance and are applying the same security in that context, but are simply virtualized versions of our traditional hardware devices. They can be deployed into public and private cloud, and they can be used to protect those environments in exactly the same way as the traditional hardware and software appliances did in the data center. Secondly, we have what we call CSPM, Cloud Security Posture Management. This is something that's become right to the fore in terms of cloud conversations across the industry. The question is, how can you assess your posture management within the context of the cloud to make sure that you are as secure as you could possibly be and that you're not threatened by configuration issues? Gartner tells us that between 85 and 90% of the successful attacks on public cloud deployments globally are down to somebody making a configuration issue mistake within that cloud deployment process. So somebody, for example, might do something as simple as leave an S3 bucket within AWS open to the internet, and an attack on that bucket would prove successful because it's not protected. CSPM, Cloud Security Posture Management, is designed to pick up those inconsistencies, to pick up those configurations issues, and make the administrators aware of them so they can be fixed. But beyond that, it is also a tool to monitor and ensure compliance of particular data protection regulations. So, for example, you need to be compliant with ISO 27000, you need to be compliant with GDPR, you need to be compliant with PCI DSS, all of these different data protection laws. Then CSPM can provide you with the ability to manage and monitor your status around those particular data protection regulations. Thirdly, a web app and API protection element is needed, whereby individuals using web applications like Salesforce, like Office 365, any number of SaaS applications that might be used within a business, those users need protection against phishing attacks, against email-borne attacks, and we can provide that in our solution set. Fourthly, compute protection. That is protecting users who might be using containers and serverless function within cloud environments. How do you protect those applications that are running within a container? Because you can't actually see the traffic running between the applications because they're containerized and because they're speaking to each other at a kernel level. Previously, up until a year or so ago, it wasn't possible to effectively monitor that traffic inside the container. However, that's changed, and we can now provide technology which does exactly that, which monitors the traffic between applications within a container and provides protection in the same way as we would traditionally provide protection in the network. And finally, and this is the really big issue, the really big talking point for cloud security overall, is how do you use what you know about cloud and what you've seen in the past to know what bad looks like and enable that knowledge to provide you with a clear threat hunting and threat intelligence capability. Within Checkpoint's infrastructure is a very large database which stores every piece of information we've ever seen around cloud intelligence and cloud threats. And we can reference that and say, well, does this look like something we've seen before? If it does, then it is potentially a threat to the environment. So we use our existing knowledge, our existing AI, to know what bad looks like within the cloud and apply the relevant protections and preventions in an automated way. So, for all of these clouds, both public on the left-hand side and private on the right-hand side, we can provide protection both from a network perspective, but also from a cloud security posture management. And what that means in real terms is, from a network perspective, we have a unified management cross-environment policies. As you can see here on the screen, it's taking into account AWS, Azure, and GCP, and providing the administrator with one single view. Threat prevention for north, south, and east-west security. That is preventing the proliferation of threats from one virtual machine, for example, to another within a cloud environment. DevSecOps and automation. Everything we monitor and protect within the environment is tagged, so we can apply that DevSecOps ability that I spoke about earlier on and do it in an automated fashion. And then finally, if the question is how difficult is this to deploy, we provide a whole series of templates to the customer so that it's easy for them to deploy it into their existing cloud deployment. You've seen this slide already, but it's good to throw it up once again, because it makes the point that there is one console to manage everything in this environment. So users, cloud assets, the applications, data, gateways, public and private cloud are all accessible from one single console, making life very, very much easier for administrators to see exactly in one view what's happening within their environment. In terms of posture management, and you'll see this in a moment from my colleague Stuart when he does a demonstration, with posture management, we're looking at visualization of infrastructure, cloud-based infrastructure, how different elements within that infrastructure are positioned from a security perspective, how compliant are they with existing internal data protection regulation, how do we customize rules within that space, how can we produce compliance reports against a particular data protection regulation set, and how do we drive automatic remediation within the environment so things are put right before they cause an issue. We can apply tamper protection in this space where we can tell if somebody has tried to tamper with the deployment. And finally, privilege escalation, the control of who accesses the cloud, which piece they access, and what levels of privilege they have within that space. And then your whole alert notification and integration piece around what alerts can we receive when something is in jeopardy or there's a problem that potentially could cause a security issue within the environment. So a whole raft of different abilities under one tool set. Workload protection, as I spoke about earlier, the ability to protect web application users and APIs based on machine learning. We know what looks bad within this environment. We can pick it up very quickly, and we can apply fully automated, low administration security to these applications. And there are a number of different cloud-native deployment options for this technology, as you can see, AWS, Azure, VMware, etc. And then in terms of workspace protection, scanning for vulnerabilities and leaked credentials, who's using what within a particular environment. We can also generate least privileged roles. So you have to have specific permissions to access parts or all of the cloud. And we can introduce runtime protection into the equation, which stops application attacks at the function input. This was the way of protecting code from its inception. And layer 7 function profiling and behavioral protection, leveraging everything we know about the cloud to understand when a particular behavior may cause the cloud to be insecure. And then in terms of compliance, as I said before, the ability to be compliant with specific rule sets, continuously scanning containers for vulnerabilities and potential threats, and runtime K8 assurance, Kubernetes assurance that we're doing the right thing. Runtime self-protection for containers, being able to look into those containers and scan them for particular issues. And then in terms of real-time alerts, visualizing traffic and activity, and historical enriched data. We can store customer logs and use them as a way of identifying if a potential attack is coming, because we've seen it before in the context of that particular customer's activity. So we can visualize user access key, console access to the environment to tell us whether anything is looking suspicious within the context of that connection. So, as well as being able to compare ourselves, if you will, or compare cloud deployments with existing regulation, we can also, within the context of the tool, write our own regulations, which we can measure our own adherence to. So in terms of the things that this toolset can do, they are significant and they absolutely target the issues that we're seeing in customers right across the globe. They wanted us to expedite investigation processes using AI, using big data analytics. They wanted to be able to create queries using a specification language. They wanted to do all those things, and we provided them with that. So we're moving now down this journey from network threat prevention right through to using cloud intelligence and threat hunting and applying those fundamentals that you see on the right-hand side, unified tool for DevSecOps, unified shift-left security, unified security automation. We're applying all of those technologies to ensure that public and private cloud deployments are secure. So we are confident that we can offer a cloud with confidence set of solutions that are unified, that apply the appropriate security. Look, there's no point in having all of this brilliant technology unless the security at the core of it all is the best you can apply. And indeed, we believe that the security, and time again, this is borne out by lab testing, our security is of the highest caliber. Being able to apply it in the automated way and apply it everywhere. Thank you very much for listening. Open to questions. Any questions that you might have, please do feel free to ask them. Thank you.
We good? Thank you, Richard, and we're back again live from Johannesburg. Richard, once again, invite is open, not only to South Africa, but certainly to many parts of Africa. First place being Lagos, then followed by Nairobi and Casablanca. At the end, Cape Town. But
I look forward to it.
Absolutely. So, and we'll have the questions as we said at the end. I think I just wanted to repeat what I said earlier, and that was that based on even on my travel in the last few days in Gaborone, Botswana, I spent some time talking to a radio station as well over there. The maturity levels on our continent when it comes to cybersecurity is probably not the highest. You know, I think we experience 3 times more cyber attacks on the continent than the average globally. And it's certainly when it comes to cloud, we have customers and organizations that are migrating to Office 365 as a start. And then we have other organizations that are migrating almost all of their workloads, and their plans are over the next few years to be completely in the cloud. So what you saw from Richard was indeed the different levels of maturity that customers and certainly our partners can help to enjoy. And we look forward to as an organization, we look forward to the duty of educating the African audience. So I did mention earlier that we had Marianne. Marianne is our field marketing manager for Africa. Just not a pretty face like me, but one as well, like Marianne. And Marianne's all the way from Nairobi, flew in yesterday. People, we are definitely adhering to the social distancing. So, and very excited to have Marianne with us today. So, Marianne, thank you.
Thank you, Pankaj, and thank you to all our attendees joining from everywhere from Africa. So, I am so excited to share our speed reading test that I am waiting to get it shown right now. So it's going to be a quick run of how quickly can we read statements. And if you come from Kenya like I do, we confuse our R's and L's. So I'm about to go running or learning. So looking forward to get the speed reading test anytime. And in the meantime, feel free to share your questions, inquiries on the chat or on your Q&A widget. We should be responding to them now. So again, are you good at speed reading? Let's see. is going to be really easy. 100 words per minute is really easy. I mean, everyone should be able to pass this. Okay. So we're going to go to the second level. Once again, really easy. You should be able to read this very comfortably. Most people, casual conversations are spoken around this speed, but it gets tougher, guys. It gets really tough. Are we still doing it? Okay, level 4. Most people are struggling to get out of but to speak, for example, oh my. And then they brought in really difficult words. Okay, level 5. If you're still on, you can go on the chat and let us know how difficult it is. I stopped. You're on the chat and still reading. Okay, looking at our chat, our Q&A. Oh, good. Guys are saying that it's really easy. Wow, fabulous, Mr. Nadif. Okay, so 600 words. How many are we still on? Lost it at level 5, Mr. George Wahome. You tried. Who's on level 8 with me? There's still levels. There's still levels. I'm surprised. Level 4, Mr. Ini. This is only superhuman things. You can only get cloud security safe if you can read that fast. Level 6 from Lagos. Perfect. Okay, so you can leave your comments, and thank you so much for trying to read on with us. We left it at level 2. Pankaj was trying, but we tried. So thank you so much for still logging on. We still have our, oh, good. We're still at 1,000 people joining us all over Africa. And we'll go now to our next speaker, Stuart Green. Stuart, what level are you on the speed reading test?
I was at the level of still trying to find my glasses. And when I finally found them, it was a bit of a blur. So yeah, terrible, really bad at that one, I'm afraid. Hopefully I'll do better at going through a demo of some of the stuff that Richard was talking about.
Okay, super. So over to you, Stuart, and we look forward to catching up after your presentation. And thank you, everyone. Post in as many questions as you can on the Q&A widget, and we will be getting to them. Thank you.
Perfect. Right, bear with me a second while I share my screen. So, hopefully you can see here my web browser. Let me just make that a little larger for everyone. So, thanks everyone for joining. My name is Stuart Green. I'm one of the cloud security architects for Checkpoint, covering the EMEA region, and I'm going to be looking today at a little bit about CSPM and how it can help benefit you in your environment and what benefits it can give you. So in the previous session, Richard's been through a number of the benefits of CSPM and how it can help you with your cloud deployments at various levels, depending on where you are in your journey to cloud. And I say it's a journey because a number of the customers we speak to are in very different stages of deployment with public cloud. So some of the customers we speak to are more on the traditional end of the scale when it comes to technology adoption. So some of those customers might be our more traditional firewall customers, people that have been using on-premises equipment in data centers, maybe in an office, maybe even a firewall on a desk with 100 cables sticking out of it. That's one end of the spectrum. And for those customers, moving to cloud can be quite an intimidating experience. There's there's a lot in public cloud to take in. Richard mentioned a few of the technologies: Kubernetes, containers, virtual machines, computing, machine learning, AI, databases. If you look at any of the public cloud catalogs, there are an overwhelming amount of services there. And it can be very tempting to just pick them up and start using them because you've read the headline features and they look interesting, they look useful, and you start using them without really understanding what you're signing up to. One of the common examples, again, something Richard mentioned, S3 buckets. If you're familiar with public cloud, you'll be aware of this. If you're not familiar with public cloud, you might still be aware of it because it's something that comes up in the media quite frequently now. Every other day, there are a number of breaches where companies have not protected their data in sufficient ways. And this is one of the services that gets a bit of a bad rep for being insecure. It's not insecure. One of the factors that plays into these data breaches is the human element. So people, again, go into the cloud, they see a service that looks good, it looks convenient, they'll use it and not fully understand how to configure it. So with the Gartner quote that I think is up to 95% of misconfigurations being down to the customer, that is a perfect example of how going into cloud without the full level of education that you need to configure those services, how that can be a problem. So that's one type of customer that we commonly speak to. At the other end of the scale, we've got customers with very advanced public cloud deployments or even hybrid deployments covering private cloud data centers and public cloud. Those types of customers are looking for something different out of a CSPM solution, and something that I'll cover a little bit on. It's not really for this type of session because it can be quite advanced. So I'll lead into it. And if it's something which is interesting to you, get in touch with us, let us know, and we'd be happy to arrange individual sessions with you to cover more of the advanced side of what we can provide with this platform. So we'll try and land somewhere in the middle, and it might be for customers who have deployed a few things into public cloud. Maybe they've been running it for a year, 2 or 3, and they're at a stage where they want to know what they're doing in public cloud, what their assets are, what regions they're running in, and more importantly, which of their assets they've got in those platforms pose a problem to their business in terms of security or compliance. So what you can see here is our CloudGuard portal. And CloudGuard is a SaaS service that you subscribe to and link your public cloud accounts to it. And we consume data from those via an API call. So you don't have to install anything to get this information. Everything happens by simply providing some credentials and some API details. The cloud platforms that we support are AWS, GCP, Azure. AliCloud will be introduced soon, as will Oracle Cloud as well. The last platform that I'll mention is Kubernetes, because we support that in various public and private cloud flavors. So if you're running container workloads across AWS or Azure, or you've got them running in a data center on a big server that you're managing yourself, we can provide the same type of insight and visibility and control over those environments, no matter where they're running. So what you see here, this is something which is quite useful to a number of customers, and it's just getting visibility of what you're doing in public cloud. Visibility is something that I speak about a lot in these events, and it's key to not just understanding what's going on in public cloud with your deployments, but controlling them. You've got absolutely no chance of securing what you've got, not just in public cloud, but in any environment, if you don't know what's there. If you've got a number of virtual machines, great, you can work to securing them. If you've got 100 storage buckets, whether it's in AWS or Azure or GCP, that you have no idea exist, then you've got no chance of securing them because you don't know that they exist. So visibility is foundational when it comes to securing what you've got in public cloud. So visibility is one of the first things we address. Once you've connected your accounts up, you're presented with a very colorful and very informative dashboard of all of the assets you've got in your cloud accounts. It might be one, it might be a handful, it might be hundreds of accounts. You can see here, this is our main internal demo account, and we've got a vast number of assets in here. It fluctuates a lot depending on who's doing demos at what particular time, but don't worry about that. That's my mess to be concerned about. So here we've got an oversight of the different assets that we've got, what platforms they exist in. And if you look into the dashboards here, you can see which of these are of immediate concern. So from onboarding your accounts into this platform, you immediately see what should get your attention. So in this case, we've got again, as is a common theme with cloud, open S3 buckets. I should probably caveat this and say that if you're using S3 buckets in your deployment, in your environments, it's not something to be concerned about. They're a great and functional facility. What is a concern is how you're configuring them. Make sure they're not public and that nobody can just take your data, or even worse, modify your data that you've got in them. That is a possibility, and that's probably a story for another time. But what we do highlight is anything that should be immediately concerning. And we can do that with what we call a compliance or posture management rule set. So all of the data here is powered by our compliance and posture management engine. And how that works is with the API data that you provide when you onboard an account, we connect to your AWS, your Azure, your GCP accounts, and more or less your Kubernetes accounts as well. So we pull back metadata about the services that you have configured in those environments. Metadata might be information about an IP address for an EC2 or a compute instance. It might be a tag that's associated with an asset. It could be a firewall rule or a security group rule that you've got configured. We consume all of that automatically and feed that into our compliance and posture management engine. So if I move over to that, I'll give you an example of how that can work. Now, if I look at, let me start first with assets. So on the visibility theme, with all of the data in here, we can see assets across all of the accounts. And one of the things which is difficult when you're working directly with the cloud platforms, some are better than others, but you can't see all of your assets in one place. Here, you've got the ability to see all of your assets across all of your accounts without delving into the posture management and the compliance rule sets that we can enforce. So if you wanted to see a particular asset type, let's say you wanted to see an instance, what you'd have to do is filter out on instances, and that will show you all of your EC2 instances across all of the regions that you might be deploying into. With that, you've got access to fairly frequently requested information, public IPs, what region it's in, how big the instance is, and more importantly, whether it's online or offline. One of the benefits of our approach to cloud security posture management in using APIs rather than agents is we get visibility of the metadata around that asset, whether it's running or not. Some other approaches to CSPM rely on having something installed on an agent. With that approach, you've got to have the agent installed first and foremost, otherwise you are blind to whatever that asset might be. Some assets don't support agent installation, so you're blind to those as well. It also requires visibility of that agent, so it has to be turned on. In development, in cloud, in DevOps, in a lot of these types of agile environments, the resources that you're creating aren't necessarily active all of the time. So that gives you another blind spot, which we can help with by using the API. With the API, having the asset exist is enough for us to report on it. We don't have to get feedback from an agent. All we see is the data coming back from the cloud platform. So assuming we've got all of this information in the platform and we've got all of the data consumed, what we want to do is not just browse it, but we want to start running reports against it and what we would call a compliance assessment. So we support a number of these out of the box, so you don't have to worry about constructing them manually. Things like GDPR, PCI DSS, FIPS, SOX, a number of different ones out of the box. There's kind of too many for me to reel off, and I don't want to bore you with all the different ones. If you're not interested in one of the more rigid frameworks, you can go with something like a best practice check, or we provide a different rule set per platform, which is a cloud checkup, which takes a number of the best practice elements and high severity concerns like public buckets, like security groups or ACLs that open too many ports to the internet, and it gives you something to get started with. So if you are on the introduction end of the cloud maturity scale, I suppose, this will give you some easy things to pick up and start addressing. If you've got a more advanced deployment, you might be looking at something like CIS benchmarks, any of the NIST frameworks, GDPR, the California Consumer Privacy Act, depending on where you're deploying your assets. All of these are in here. And all you have to do is choose which one you want to run, which platform you want to assess it against, and then get your results back. So let's say, for example, one of the big things in Europe is GDPR. We've got these provided out of the box, and all you have to do is click on the rule set you're interested in. You can see here that these are built up of a number of different rules that assess a number of different assets and technical controls and points of interest, let's say. I'll go into these in a bit more detail, but if you're not interested in the individual building blocks of these rule sets, all you have to do, hopefully you can see it, is click on Run Assessment. Choose which account you want to run it on. You can run it on a single account, or you can run it across every single account that you've got added in your CloudGuard environment. You click Run. What happens in the background is that will go off. It will hit each and every API that we need to consume all of the metadata. And very quickly, unless it's going to show me up now that we're live and demoing, it will give you a report back on the assets that you've got that fail that particular validation. So you can see here, again, disclaimer, this is our demo account, so it's nothing to do with Checkpoint in production. The poor score is perfectly acceptable here. You get an overall score. So hopefully you would see something, 80, 90% plus. In this case, it's pretty bad. But again, test account, don't hold this against us. Then you've got a breakdown of the different rules by severity, what the entity types are, and a geographic distribution of what the data is. So if you are a large enough company where you've got different teams looking at different assets or different services per region, you can use this to break the report up and assign different parts to different teams to go off and fix. They're the graphics, that's nice to have, but what's really important is the data. So here we can see we've got each of those rules that we saw in the previous screen. Each of those generates a separate finding. The finding within it has a number of assets. So here, S3 buckets outside of Europe, something which isn't particularly compatible with GDPR. This gives you an explanation of the rule, which article of the framework it violates, and which of the assets in your cloud accounts, what region they're in. These are the ones that violate it. So in this case, we are testing any S3 bucket that exists outside of Europe. Here, S3 bucket should have a region match, and it should have EU in the name. It's fairly simple. All of these rules are driven by a custom language that we've built called GSL, Governance Specification Language. It's designed to be an easy to read and understand language without having to learn something like JavaScript or SQL or another complex query language. It's designed so what you say and what you're trying to assess is almost what you write down. But you don't have to worry about constructing it from scratch when you're new to the platform. We provide a builder tool, which is as simple as clicking the relevant icons and building up the different blocks of the policy. So for example, let's say I wanted to check that all of my instances were running in a particular region. So for me, one that I typically use is Ireland, EU West 1. So I would go for instance, should have, region equals EU West 1. I'll test that, and I'll test it against my production account. Again, I'll pick one account, but it could be 10, could be 100, could be all of our accounts. Here we can see that any that are outside of EU West 1 have failed. So we've got all the ones in Oregon, in North America, South America, Africa, China, all of the different regions where we've got assets deployed. All of those have failed my test. And it's as simple as that. If you want to have something more complex, we support that as well. You can add in a combination of things like instance should have region equals something, where tags equal something else. And you can build up a very bespoke policy very quickly to cover off any of the requirements you have. Using this interface, it makes tasks like this very quick and very easy. If you're familiar with the public cloud platforms, think how many steps you would have to go through to do this manually without this tool. It might be a combination of using the native consoles, it might be API calls, then you might have to dump it all into a spreadsheet, run some formulas on it to aggregate it all. In this case, it's all done for you. If you want to output it as a spreadsheet, you can have that. Similarly, any of the data that we have in the platform can be accessed and output via an API. So moving to the more advanced spectrum of our cloud customers, if you don't want to be logging in and running these reports manually, you can trigger them and get the data back via an API. And we've got a very simple, well-documented REST API for doing that. So depending on where you are on the cloud adoption, maturity scale, whatever I'm going to settle on calling it, we've got an option for you. You can log in, you can run these reports, and you can consume them in a way that's familiar and useful to you, or you can set it up in a more advanced scenario. And this is something which I'll cover briefly, called continuous compliance. So what we've done here is we've logged in, we found a report that we're interested in, and we've clicked the play button to assess what's happening at this moment, what is configured now, and what is violating any of the compliance rule sets that we've got in place now. That's great. But as you'll know from other technologies and other products, when you run that report, it's quite likely that things are going to change. So what is compliant now might not be compliant in 10 minutes, an hour, a day, a week, until you run the next report. What we offer is something called continuous compliance, which is taking the rule sets, again, one that you've created yourself or one that we provide out of the box, and combining that with a notification policy. That notification policy could be something as simple as getting an email to an individual or to a team or to a shared mailbox. So when something is detected that is potentially moving you out of compliance with one of the frameworks that's important to your business, you can log in and you can change it. You don't have to wait for a week for someone else to notice it, or worse still, for an attacker or a malicious actor to notice it. You get ample notification that something has been discovered and you need to fix it now. That could be, as I say, an email, something fairly trivial, or it could be something a little more interesting. It could be an SNS notification, which is something native to AWS if you're familiar with that platform. This is an immediate notification into AWS that is commonly used as a trigger for automatic reactions. So we support that, and one of the automatic reactions that we offer is a technology called a CloudBot. It's effectively an open source Python script that takes the findings that we generate and takes an action on them. Something which I've implemented for a number of customers is automatically enforcing a default security group for your customer, or for your environment rather. So let's say, for example, you've got a presence in AWS and you want to make sure that you have My Corporate Security Group applied to all of your assets that have a particular tag. If the continuous compliance engine on its regular scans found that there was an instance without that particular security group applied, rather than sending you an email that triggers maybe a help desk ticket or makes somebody log on to a particular system, they read the email, they accept the ticket, then they log on to the cloud platform and assign the security group, it will do it for you. So again, it uses API calls, talks back to the platform, takes the data that we send it, and automatically applies the action that you want. So you can very quickly move from just manually running reports whenever you feel like it, to having them run continually in the background, and then take it a step further and automatically fix a number of things that it finds. You might not want to necessarily have it automatically remediate from the outset, because customers have different requirements when it comes to remediation, and what we deem to be the default might not be the default for everyone. So we'd always recommend that you apply automatic remediations with care and attention. You don't want it to go and apply a security group to 100,000 assets that you've got across all of your cloud accounts, because that might not be the correct action. But they're customizable. You can take what we provide you, customize the rule sets, customize the security group, customize everything about it. It's all open, it's all fully accessible to customers, and we can provide help with creating your own cloud bots, your own rule sets, and your own actions if you want to. If you're not quite ready for that, what might be a nice middle ground is sending the notification into an existing workflow that you have set up. For that, we support sending alerts to HTTP endpoints. A number of products support these, and there are almost an infinite number that we can integrate with via this method. But some of the common ones we support out of the box. So if you're using something like ServiceNow or Jira for your ticketing solution, you tick the box, provide your authentication details, and then this will automatically create the tickets or the issues for you in the relevant system. That will get assigned based on your workflow rules and go to the right individual for that. So we take care of a lot of the heavy lifting for you. We get the finding, we generate the notification, and we log the ticket. That then fits into your existing workflows with very minimal effort, and a human being at the end of it can pick up that ticket and resolve it. It gets closed off automatically, and they're free to carry on with whatever they do as their day job. So that's the compliance side of things. As we said at the start of this, if there are any questions, feel free to drop it into the Q&A window, and I will pick those up once I've finished talking. A couple of other bits that I wanted to show you. So moving on from visibility as something of critical nature when it comes to CSPM and looking after your cloud assets, control and intelligence over that is equally as important. And with access to all of this metadata, we provide a tool called CloudGuard Intelligence, again, something Richard touched on, which gives you another level of visibility and control into what's going on in your cloud environment. There are two sides to this. We have intelligence for application interactions, and we have intelligence for network traffic. On the application interactions, what we give you is a tool to visualize the service and API conversations that happen in the background between all of your components that you've got in your cloud accounts that aren't network connected. I'll cover that separately. So here you would be able to visualize where you've got Lambda functions talking to containers, talking to IAM roles, talking to databases, to S3 buckets, all of the things which don't necessarily generate network traffic. We can visualize that. So this facilitates very effective threat hunting in this environment. For example, if you wanted to track a particular identity that you believe might be acting abnormally, you could type that identity in and you could follow its interactions through any of the services within a particular account in your AWS or your Azure environments. GCP is coming. It's currently in development, but that will be coming hopefully by the end of this year. So in this case, you can click on any of the entities that have generated an API activity, and you can drill down into a timeline of what that identity has done. Here, you can see here, it's getting authorization details. This is a legitimate action, but we also provide machine learning and AI-based rule sets in the background to take the hard work out of this type of analysis for you. All you have to do is choose the rule set that you're interested in, something like a MITRE framework-based rule set for privilege escalation. You would see IAM roles which are trying frequently different services where they might have permissions to see if they can get a foothold in the account and pivot on to different services to, again, increase their privilege and move further into the accounts. Something that was quite common in one of the recent breaches with a large financial institution. The way that the attacker got in and managed to get the data out used that exact technique. So we've got rule sets to provide that automatically. Again, if you want to manually investigate, you can do that as well. And we support querying of the data that we provide using the same GSL, the governance specification language that you build your rule sets in. So you don't have to learn another language to use this tool. It's pretty much identical to how you would build your rule set. So if you're familiar with that, you can move into this very easily. The last piece that I'll cover is the network traffic side of things. And this has a very interesting tie-in to some of the checkpoint technology that exists outside of the platform. So I would imagine we've got a fair number of people on this session. Most of you will hopefully have heard of Checkpoint from our firewall heritage. With that is a technology called ThreatCloud. ThreatCloud is our global intelligence database where any Checkpoint component contributes to and draws on data from ThreatCloud. So if, for example, we had a firewall customer one side of the world that a user behind that firewall downloaded a PDF attachment from something. If we had no intelligence on that, we would send it into ThreatCloud where it would run through a number of different threat analysis engines, and we would pick up on any potentially malicious behavior. So if it tried to download an executable, if it tried to access a website or tried to do something that generally a PDF shouldn't do, we will analyze that behavior and generate a verdict on whether or not we think that behavior is good or bad. For the firewall, the connection will get terminated and the user will get a page saying this file does something bad. Why that's relevant here is if we see that PDF or that attachment talking to a number of servers that we do hold intelligence on, let's say an IP address or a malicious URL, we can reference that here. And that's what's represented by this skull and crossbones is data that has come out of ThreatCloud that represents something bad. And we distill that down into our intelligence environment by giving you a very simple query called is malicious. So you can run a query across your network activity that says, show me where the destination is malicious or the source is malicious. If it's where the source is malicious, that's a general part of being on the internet. So that's a fairly standard thing to see. However, if you were looking at malicious traffic going outside of your environment, that's something which demands a lot more urgency and something you need to look at with a more closer level of detail. So that is actually quite a small part of our CloudGuard platform. And I haven't spoken about our serverless capabilities, our containers, our web application firewall, or how all of this can be integrated into our DevOps environments using our Shift Left tool. I'll leave it there. Any questions? I'll start looking through the QA now. Thank you for listening, and I'll hand back to our hosts.
Okay, thank you so much, Stuart. Now that you got your glasses back, maybe you can give us a short view of what you think about security, cybersecurity landscape for Africa. You have your glasses on, you can see it better.
So, the landscape in general, that's a lot
To cover. Fortunately, it's something I've covered recently talking to another customer. So the landscape in general, it's an interesting one, and depending on who you're talking to might determine what type of angle you come at it from. As Checkpoint, we see a vast amount of threats, and we see some very advanced threats. If you follow our blogs and our research team, we cover some very advanced threats when it comes to 0 days, malware analysis, and what we would call sort of 0-day threats. The opposite end of that scale is something that I think comes across more often in cloud environments, which is simple misconfigurations. And it's exactly what we aim to address with a solution like CloudGuard CSPM, having a broad amount of services in the cloud where you don't necessarily know what you're doing, they're difficult to configure, and sometimes a bit misleading when it comes to what you think is secure in your cloud environment. So quite easily, misconfiguration is top of my list when it comes to looking at what you've got configured in cloud. And hopefully that's what we can aim to address with our CSPM solution.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Stuart. And I will hand it over to our next speaker, joining us from Nigeria, Justice. So as Justice logs on, Justice, how are you today?
Hi, can you hear me? I'm very much fine. Thank you, Mariam. Okay, that's good.
So our regional director was a bit naughty and forgot to start by giving us a quick count of how many of us are logging on from Nigeria. Just put your hand up on the raise your hand up widget. Everyone from Nigeria, let's just have a quick tally. Okay, good. It looks really, really good. Oh wow, is everyone from Nigeria? Perfect. So over to you, Justice. You have so much support from Nigeria. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mariam. My name is Justice, and I'm broadcasting straight from Lagos here in Nigeria. I work with Checkpoint as senior security engineer and a cloud subject matter expert. And today we'll be looking at how cloud technologies drive innovations and digital transformation. Now, it is no news that cloud adoption plays a critical role in any digital transformation journey. What I want to share with you next is a recent survey that basically shows us some very interesting data. Now, what it shows us basically is the fact that in the past 18 months, nearly 80% of organizations has experienced a cloud data breach. Now, this is very interesting, but we're going to ride on this and share with you some very key important information as we go on. Now, I'm going to take you through what are the cloud transformation journey that we see within the world on a global scale. How has the cloud changed everything, and how are attackers taking advantage of this change to infiltrate attacks on organizations? Now, what we see is the fact that we've seen a huge, attack on organization, and I'm going to be sharing with you 3 key attacks that we see on a global scale with public cloud, with private cloud, and also with some productivity tools that we use on a day-to-day basis. And lastly, I'm going to round up in terms of tell you exactly what we need to do if we need to secure our cloud from a holistic point of view. Now, we've seen a lot, and my colleague has spoken a lot around the tools that we use, but we're going to look at it from a strategy. How do we build security in the cloud from a foundational level to the top pyramid level? So let's start. So what is it about modern cloud application that is different from the legacy way we've deployed IT services? What are the things that we do currently that is different from the things that we used to do in the past? Of course, number one is the fact that organizations now pay for exactly what they use. And I think this is the biggest attraction point from a business perspective, because you can only now pay for exactly what you consume. And this is made possible by the use of cloud native constructs like serverless functions that my colleagues have mentioned, containers and serverless offerings, And secondly, you can now make procurement in seconds. Now, the ability to procure resources and create infrastructure now used to take a long time, but now can happen as quick as possible. Now, this may be the greatest gift, from a business perspective, except for the security guys. We no longer have time right now to ensure that the security that needs to be in place are in place. Now, new applications deployed currently today are deployed in smaller pieces, but of course, this makes them more modular, and they now can talk to different aspects of the cloud-based infrastructure, which makes it a key challenge for security organizations. And also, we can now, deploy changes to production, as quick as possible. Now, this is a critical part in terms of how security is inculcated, because before you know it, in terms of changes are made and are deployed to production without even, us knowing by the developers. So what we're seeing is the fact that organizations are moving, as organizations move to more cloud-native tools and approaches, the journey for the security professionals is actually in the opposite direction. Now, as they move from bare metals to VMs and to other serverless and more cloud-native functions, the less control we see security teams have over their cloud-based environments. This control now has been given to developers, and why so? And this is because, obviously, of the speed at which things are being deployed by developers. As technology evolves to enable more rapid development for DevOps, it has become more challenging for security people like us to keep up and maintain control over the cloud-based environment. And this is very important. This is very important because security doesn't have to stand as a disabler to the business. Come and think about it, the speed at which changes are made to the infrastructure is actually really good, because if you need to make changes, for example, push patches to your infrastructure, you need to do it at a quick pace. If you need to make enhancements, you need to do it at a quick pace. But as security, we need to gain control of this process from a security perspective without slowing down things. And for this to happen, automation plays a very key part. We need to automate security within the cloud for it to be effective. And if you're doing security manually today in the cloud, it actually would not cut it. Now, the DevOps are actually king, in terms of the cloud-based environment, because they're the ones that actually push changes and make modifications. DevOps and infrastructure as code is enabling developers to push code to production much more quickly. And this has given them more control and power. And what we are saying, from a developer point of view, is the fact that security needs to shift left. Security needs to move earlier in the development process. We need to catch vulnerabilities before they hit production. We need security to tightly integrate with the developer's system. And of course, we are very familiar with the whole concept of perimeter in our legacy infrastructure. But within the cloud, the perimeter is not a great model for security. Modern cloud apps have high number of resources interacting with third-party services in and out of the perimeter. Data come out in and out of these apps in many more ways than in the past. So we need to think differently. Permissions are the way to go. List permissive rules for roles and users is very important, and we need to make them very granular as possible to prevent what we call privilege escalation, which we're going to talk about and drill down, very, very soon. Now, of course, we know that one line of code within the cloud-based infrastructure can give an attacker access to the whole infrastructure. Now, common things that we need to put into consideration when deploying or when moving to the cloud is the fact that we need to ensure that there are no plain text secrets when deploying our codes. We need to be aware of open source repository. While they are good for collaboration and building apps, but also the vulnerabilities they contain are also made public. And we also ensure that we have some level of automation with our security configuration. We need to ensure that there are pre-production scans and also list permissive permissions. That is very key. List permissive permissions within a cloud-based environment also have to be implemented. Now, this is a broad view of how the cloud is changing the game. Now, but what I want to talk to you about next is how attackers are taking advantage of this disruption and changes to steal and to exfiltrate organization. And a key concept, one very important concept that I want us to see is the fact that privilege escalation, which is very important in the cloud, it's something that we need to understand. This is a very important concept to understand in the cloud. Almost every major cloud breach we have seen has utilized privilege escalation techniques in some way. In order to demonstrate this, what I will be sharing with us, I've taken us through an attack flow that Checkpoint research team uncovered in AWS, biggest cloud platform we have currently in the world. Now, Checkpoint research team uncovered an attack flow in AWS, which really shows how pervasive the issue of privilege escalation in cloud is. It starts with an attacker that has a compromised pair of AWS keys, and how he got those keys can be debated. He could have gotten it via phishing email or via GitHub, but the first thing the attacker did is to obtain temporary credentials using what we call the get session token command. Now, this is a form of defense evasion. Now, if for any reason permanent credential that the threat actor started with are deleted or disabled, they would still have access to the environment. Now, next, what he did is to do the get caller identity command to get the username associated with the credentials. In this instance, he was able to get the low priv user credentials. Now, knowing that the attacker searches through CloudTrail logs, which is the log repository within AWS for the low priv username, and what they are trying to do here is to find out with the permissions they have, what action they can carry out. Now, they find out an event, assume role event, assuming the Lambda creator role with the ARM full details visible to the attacker. Now, making it very easy to assume this exact role. Now, this is the first instance of what we call privilege escalation and lateral movements in this flow. Now, after the attacker assumed the Lambda creator role, they repeated their techniques by searching the CloudTrail logs again, finding an event called update function configuration on a Lambda function called automate update SSM param. Now, the way Lambda function works is that it works in layers. Now, the code of Lambda function is stored separately from the rest of the function. These layers can be shared across accounts. So the actors create the malicious layer in their own AWS accounts. They insert malicious code into a library used by the function. And when the Lambda function is invoked, it will use this altered library instead of the default one. The malicious code will result in the Lambda sending all its environmental variables to the attacker's IP. The attacker set up a listener, and when Lambda is invoked, it sends all its environmental variables, including the STS token, of the function rule. Now, with that, they can easily assume the full access rule, very important, which has the sufficient permission to access DynamoDB table to exfiltrate data, like what we see in the screen, where the Rakium is stealing information from the plates, typically to what we see within Cloudways on how exfiltration occurs. Now, if we look at the event in the CloudGuard threat intelligence solution, you will see actually all that the attacker did in an easy to digest way. Now, it shows an attacker moving from a low priv row to a Lambda creator row, with the assume row to the automation SSM param to the Lambda SSM row, where they now had sufficient permission to exfiltrate that data. Now, this is privilege escalation, and it's a very important concept to understand within the cloud. We need to make least permissive the default for everything. Our cloud-based services only allow resources, workloads, function, containers to have only the permission they need to do what they have to do, nothing more. Now, the next thing I want to talk to us about are cloud-based SaaS application. Very important, because we see a huge adoption of this application, and these are productivity tools basically that we use, on a day-to-day basis, like Zoom. But what I'm going to focus today on is on O365 mail platform. Now, this is another Checkpoint research finding. They found a business email compromise from an attacker group that always started with a targeted phishing campaign on high-profile individuals, basically tricking them into providing their mailbox credentials From there, they move into what we call the reconnaissance mode, where they can spend weeks or even months reading emails, understanding how money transfers are made within the cloud-based platform, to understand key roles inside the company and the relationship with other companies. From here, the attacker will start to move, like setting up lookalike domains, mail servers, mailbox rules that will allow them to impersonate both companies and control the communication between them. So they find out a way to inject the fraudulent bank account while making sure both parties are unaware or believe this change is legitimate. Once the company in question accepts the new banking information and agrees to perform the transaction, all that is left to do is to wait for the money while still monitoring the conversation to make sure they go unnoticed. Now, the attacker will repeat this process and this procedure and extract information from other clients, from this particular client, and will repeat this activity on other institutions. And this is a very key concept for us to understand, to put in the required controls within our productivity tools. So phishing campaigns is something that's not going to go away. We see it on a day-to-day basis. It's going to continue, but they are just, what we see attackers do is that they're just moving to the new attack vector platform, in this instance, cloud-based, SaaS-based application. And the last attack, the last set of attack that I'm going to talk about has to do with the most prolific attack in recent times called Sunburst. I'm sure we heard about the Sunburst attack. Now we're going to look at how did it take place. What did the attacker do mostly in the cloud? Now, the first part of this have been heavily documented, so I'm not going to go through the details, but this is the part that happened on-prem, where the actor gained administrative access to the organizer's ADFS server. Now, this enabled them to forge SAMI tokens and create legitimate registration of SAMI trust relationships. And this ended up giving them, powerful administrative access into the customer Azure AD. Now, the next part of the attack is what occurred in the cloud. That is what I want us to discuss next. Now, once the threat actor and the attacker gained that initial foothold into the cloud environment, they did this, of course, by compromising some privileged cloud users that had administrative access to the Azure AD. What they did next was add credentials to an existing application or service principal. In order to do that, the actor needs first to list all the existing applications. What they are looking actually for here is an application with a high traffic pattern, for example, email archive application. And the reason for this is for them to be able to hide their malicious activities. So they decided to choose a particular app called the Mail app. Of course, this is an imaginary app. We're using it for the purpose of this conversation. And what they did was to extract very key components, like the object ID, the application ID, and the account ID of this app. Next, the actor creates new credentials and adds them to this app. Now they have the credentials of the application which can be used to authenticate to the Azure AD on behalf of this application. Now, in this next step, they listed all the available permissions related to Microsoft Graph API. They added the user.read.all permissions to the Mail app. The error that you see in red indicates that an admin consent must be launched to approve this permission. Now, the way the admin consent workflow works is that it gives admin a secure way to grant access to applications that requires admin approval. Now, when a user tries to access an application but is unable to provide consents, they can send a request for admin approval. This request is sent to the admin who has been created as the reviewer. Now, due to the fact that in this instance, the attacker already has the administrative permission, they can launch an admin consent on their own. Now, then the next step is for the actor to acquire an OAuth access token for the application. Now, they do this by initiating what we call HTTP GET requests, which included the tenant ID, the object ID, and the app ID, and of course, the secret credentials obtained from before. Now, this access token enables the actor to move laterally, impersonate the Mail app application, and execute actions on behalf of it, including data exfiltration. And finally, the actor calls the APIs with the permission assigned to the mail app application. The actor initiates what we call HTTP GET request, which included the actor token to exfiltrate all users in the tenant and all emails related to the specific user. And we can see from the screen how the user information has been exfiltrated, emails have been exfiltrated, even email subjects you can see clearly from the example on the screen. And this is typically how it looks like. It's like a monkey pulling your wheels, or probably a bird getting into the supermarket and picking up things, all to the blindness of individuals. Now, so what we've seen basically currently is how the cloud is changing everything. I've shown you the things that we are doing differently from legacy. I've also shown you the attacks that we see currently in the cloud, how we need to apply least permissive rules, how we need to secure our productivity tools, and also how we need to secure or the things we need to be conscious about when we move to cloud-based, public cloud-based environment. Now, the key question is, how do we actually build a security strategy around our cloud-based deployment? And I know unified and continuous might sound like buzzword, but the notion of doing something in a unified and continuous way has never been more important than now with cloud adoption. Now we see the different pieces that we need to have within cloud-based environment: governance, visibility. My colleagues spoke about it a lot, and prevention. But the truth about it is these components work on their own, but we need to have a way to unify them all together. We must integrate all of these pieces. Otherwise, the value of each individual piece, will be much, much lower. And of course, this has to be done continuously across cloud network workloads, within our cloud-based environments. Now, if you look at the building blocks in terms of how we should build our strategy around securing cloud-based, from a foundational perspective, we need to have what we call the posture management, which basically is all about understanding and identifying your risk in any cloud-based environment. My colleague showed you the whole posture management entity that gives you visibility across your cloud-based environment, and how to improve security and compliance. And this has to be on a continuous basis. And we do this in two different parts. One, we need to be able to do configuration scanning. Every cloud asset, be it Kubernetes, serverless, and whatever it is, needs to be scanned and config needs to be, to be least prevalent codes. We need to look inside, our container images and our serverless deployment packages, and even our Terraform templates to find out if there are any exposed credentials or known vulnerability. But better still, this can be done with a tool that automatically. It is better off when we can do this automatically, and it points us out to what we're doing wrongly without even us putting in any manual efforts. And secondly, we've done this very perfectly on our legacy infrastructure, on-premise infrastructure. We need also to take this concept of network security, to a whole new level. But it needs to be done properly and configured properly, because misconfiguration within the network security introduces what we call risk into the cloud-based environments. Because those are so ephemeral, my colleagues spoke a lot about visibility within the cloud-based environment. We need to have rich login capabilities. IP address massive, and the scale also is so massive. We also need to do what we call micro segmentation, which is basically doing it at the scale that the cloud requires. And we can actually apply what we call tag-based application into our cloud-based environment to be able to segment and align with the whole DevOps concept of deploying them services in that because the nature of workload is very critical, across VMs, across containers, and functions. You should be doing what we call baseline, also doing what we call blacklist to prevent common attacks, and also doing what we call automated machine learning based web application protection, because we understand that the legacy way of doing application security in the cloud actually would not cut it. Within recent and dynamic applications that we have currently in cloud, we need to think proactively. We need to be able to proactively protect automatically our cloud-based dynamic construct within cloud-based environments. Now, above all, if you look at what we've done, you can do everything correctly, but without a layer that provides threat detection or threat capability, you might be blind. So there's a need for an intelligent layer to be able to zero in when something bad happens, to know what was affected and what needs to be done. So basically what I'm trying to say is the fact that we need to have a way to unify our security, and we need to have a way to ensure we bring everything together from governance, prevention, visibility, to ensure that, at the end of the day, we are applying a unified concept and also applying it continuously across our cloud-based environment. So thank you, and I hope we'll get questions from you afterwards.
Hello, good morning, bonjour, hola, shalom, salam alaikum from all the way from Morocco. So thank you, Justice. Thanks everyone for this great presentations and great knowledge sharing with our customers and our partners. So yeah, are you guys ready for the next challenge? I think Marianne started with the reading challenge. I'm gonna go with the listening or hearing challenge. I'm gonna start with speaking 1,000 words within a couple of minutes and see who can catch them all. No, I'm just joking. Sorry. So we're gonna move on to the basically the question and response with our panel. So I would like to invite Justice, Nomata, Richard, and Stewart to join me on the call. And before starting with the questions, so my name is Issa Miladiwi. I'm leading the pre-sales and sales engineering organization in Africa with the guys and the colleagues that you've just been with during this presentation. And I can just put some emphasis on basically how important this security in the cloud is an important topic and is an important subject. Simply as Justice mentioned earlier on, so we, according to IDC, 80% of businesses suffered from data breach in the cloud platform in the last 12 or 18 months. And another number that we can bring in is basically 90% of businesses are already running some of their IT on the cloud. And again, IDC are projecting 94% of the workload will be running out of cloud data centers. So with this, it is very popular attack surface for the threat actors. So simply because it's on 24/7. So for the threat actors, going after some account takeover attacks on a cloud platform is something that is really interesting and lucrative for them. So you can see the importance of this, and that's why we, as an organization, we are trying to bring in all the latest technology and advancement to help you in your cloud journey, as the guys mentioned. So with this, I will start with the first question. Is basically, I'll start with Richard. So one of the questions we had, as you clearly mentioned, so the cloud adoption is a journey. So how scalable our technology and our solution to go with a particular organization and a particular business, moving from stage 1, go into the cloud until they move everything or pretty much everything, or go in a hybrid model, having something in the cloud and something within their data center?
Well, it's a very interesting question. The scalability of the solutions that we're providing was something we thought about right from the beginning. So the opportunity to give the customer the chance to dip a toe in the water, so to speak. If they've just started using cloud, then they can deploy just one or two virtualized gateways into that cloud network and allow them to do their work in protecting against the sort of security threats that we've seen for a long time. Also, if they're expanding their use of the cloud and they move on to having hundreds or perhaps even thousands of assets within that space, then that is the point at which we would expect them to move on to using more in-depth tools like CSPM to analyze their position, to ensure that they're not making configuration mistakes that might result in them being insecure. So really, right from the very start of the journey, from just a few assets in the cloud to right through to and including some of the biggest cloud deployments in the world, we're completely scalable across those environments. And because of the way that the commercials are constructed around these solutions, it makes a lot of sense, even if a customer's starting out at the very beginning with a small deployment, for them to be able to use the products right from the start.
Thank you. Excellent, Richard. So another question related to this first one was, is these applications or these solutions that we presented applicable to public cloud as well as private cloud, or can we have the deployment in a hybrid mode? So if you don't mind, Stuart, addressing this question, if that's okay for you.
Yeah, of course. So one of the great things about Checkpoint, the key is kind of in our name. So Checkpoint Software Technologies Limited. The journey for us from the humble firewall when it started off 27, 28 years ago to go from a simple firewall to hardware appliances to public cloud was very easy because we're software. Our technology runs pretty much anywhere you can run compute workloads. So to go from a huge monolithic slab of a firewall on a big appliance running in a data center to having that running in public cloud, to having it in both environments, running across public, private cloud, hybrid cloud, any combination of that is incredibly easy for us. So when public cloud first started getting some momentum behind it and seeing users adopt it more frequently and more heavily, for us, it was a case of putting our software on a virtual machine, basically running in public cloud. So that was very easy. One of the other strengths is in our management. So no matter where that technology runs, whether it's private cloud, public cloud, hardware, an open server, a Dell, an HP, any instance of Checkpoint is exactly that to us. It's another instance of Checkpoint. So as we've seen in a couple of the presentations, you have the same policy, the same threat prevention technology, same logging, the same reporting, no matter where you've got it deployed. For us, we make it incredibly easy for customers to run across any combination of public or private cloud environments.
Okay, thank you. Thanks, Stuart. I hope it's clear for the audience and clear for everyone who join us on this summit. So we're moving on to Nomata. Nomata, do you want to tell us how quick this solution can be deployed? If today I'm going for the posture management to have a full visibility of basically all my cloud environment and cloud assets and see how secure and how close to a particular standard or a regulations. So is it a quick process? Is it something that we can enable quickly?
Quite quick, intuitive, and very seamless. Like I said earlier when I was actually doing my presentation, what we have done with actually our new management platform is to just make sure that everything is done quickly and efficiently and avoids errors. So this is avoids misconfiguration errors. So this solution is actually quite simple to deploy. What I've done, I think in the past, giving my personal example, especially with our BTP product, our Quantum Spark series of gateways, actually deployment in some of these instances is actually plug and play. And with some of our major gateways, within a matter of hours, up to about 2 hours or so, you actually can deploy the solution. And the managing part of the solution, like Stuart actually said, is what we have focused on and improved on over the years, which we've made it very super fast to actually deploy. So it's intuitive, easy to deploy, and super fast to install as well.
Excellent, excellent. Justice, I followed your presentation and I enjoyed actually the attack anatomy that you've taken us through, and showing how the privilege escalation happened within the cloud platform, and showing us the, let's say, the mode of operation that the threat actors have used to basically go through all the steps and hit their target. So one of the questions from the audience was, let's say, for a particular user accidentally did something. Are we actually able to detect this using our solution, to have a visibility of something that a user of particular non-savvy, let's say, non-tech savvy employee or user did, and cause some data breach and cause some damages, let's say, to some confidential and sensitive asset? Do you want to explain to us, please, how can we get full visibility and see this happening?
Yeah, thank you very much, Sam. I think in terms of going into details, Stuart will do that, because this is the whole concept of posture management and understanding having visibility across your environments. What we have put in place is a solution that can give customers that ability to have that level of control, so we call guardrails. You can actually secure permissions of users and what they can do within the cloud-based environments using the posture management solution. And we can also, even reverse and mitigate unauthorized changes if a user is trying probably to make changes within the cloud-based environment that could, expose and heighten the risk within the customers or in the tenant environment. The posture management platform can actually do an auto remediation functionality and proactively prevent those kind of attacks within cloud-based platform. But I think Stuart would actually give us more details in terms of how the cloud bots can actually make this very effective.
Thank you. Thanks a lot, Justice. I have one more question, and this is the last one. I don't know whether you want to take it, Justice, as well. So we understand and we understood from the presentation from the audience that basically the classical security threat prevention, let's say, solutions or modules are not applicable anymore for new applications deployment. So they are probably applicable for a monolithic application that sits on a particular server. Now, as we are going to serverless kind of deployment, so can you give us some example? Let's say why, if I move a web application, for example, to a cloud environment, the web application firewall is probably not enough and will be missing something. And with all the machine learning that you took us through, we will be able to uncover more. So can you give us some examples, some concrete examples of things that we can probably unleash from with our solution that you presented?
Okay, I think this is very interesting because we all understand the concept of legacy. Securing web-based application in the past has been about putting in static rules, even within the on-premise environment. And it is okay for customers to think that same strategy would work in cloud-based environments, but they fail to realize that this environment is very dynamic. The nature of web application within cloud-based environments is so dynamic that it doesn't actually apply in terms of how we've been doing application development using the monolith approach. Now, these applications, they are so, in terms of how changes are made, in terms of how they communicate, in terms of the different components, we need to have a more proactive approach. We need to have not just static rules, but rules that are automatic to be able to understand the nature of this application and be able to put in the required proactive, preventive capabilities. And that is where basically we are shifting, I would say shifting left. We are moving from the legacy way of on-premise static approach to application security to a more dynamic approach. And that is where Checkpoint comes in basically. If you're still looking at the static way of deploying applications in the cloud, that will not cut it, because come to think about it, these applications are exposing APIs. APIs, and these APIs come in different, in terms of connection rates. And this is something we never used to do with on-premise applications. So we need to think differently, and that is where the Checkpoint application security and runtime protection comes into play. And that is what we're advising for organizations. If you need to deploy dynamic applications, that are really not monolithic within cloud-based environments, you need to think differently and help you towards that journey.
Perfect. Thank you, Justice. Very clear. And with this, we close our Q&A session. And I would just like to remind, as I mentioned, so the cloud is something that everyone is talking about now. Securing it is a topic that every CISO and every CIO is having in mind. And as you've seen through the presentation and through the summit, so we come with solution and latest technology to secure the infrastructure, which is hosted in the cloud. We help you automate and integrate with your DevSecOps and DevOps, let's say, process. More on that, we offer you the platform to do investigation, to do forensic analysis, and basically give you a full visibility and a posture of your security when it's being hosted in the cloud. Thank you very much. I hope that you enjoyed it, and that was very interesting and useful for you. We will share the recording with you. We will share the slide deck with you. So we'll send you a link which include everything. And with this, I'll hand it back to our team in Joburg. Thank you.
Thank you, presenters. Thank you, Isam, for hosting the panel. I hope most of the questions were answered. It appears to me from what I saw that certainly we did. And I do want to apologize at this point to some of the attendees that I had forgotten to mention some country names in the beginning. So the folks from Angola, I think there was 1 or 2 mentions from Angola. Indeed, there are many other countries on the continent, Uganda, Tanzania, I can go through all of them, Ethiopia, Algeria, Libya, Zimbabwe, Zambia. So we are certainly very excited to have hosted so many participants from all over the continent. As we mentioned earlier, a very large contingent on this online forum, one of many that we host, this one in particular directed towards cloud. We've had a large, certainly attendees, a list of attendees as well from the media. So you'll see significant broadcast coverage as well in that sense. We've been live on Facebook, we've been live on LinkedIn, had significant amount of followers, so very, very excited about that as well. If you're still unclear, and I think there was a question around, do we have a Lagos office? I must say that Justice is from Lagos. so Justice is one of our colleagues. You'll see in front of you a slide or representation of the organization across the continent. We have offices in Lagos, offices in Nairobi, offices in South Africa, and as I mentioned earlier, indeed we have a team now set up in Morocco as well. But we have, several partners, in fact, close to 300 partners across the continent competent in this technology and solutions to help you in those countries where we don't have an office. So talk to us. We thought it was important to share with you the structure. I think a lot of people are not aware that it's a fairly large team in that sense. And so on that note, we will certainly share this with you as well. I'd also like to take this opportunity to give you a view of us across the continent, not only at a people level. What you're seeing in front of you is a representation of many of our customers, from north to south, east to west, English speaking, Portuguese speaking, as you see there, French speaking. You heard Isam greet everybody in French. certainly the north part in Arab countries as well. And our intention indeed is over time to get some of these customers, if not others, to share with you their experiences, not only in cloud, but certainly in other areas of cybersecurity as best practice. So that is our goal, and certainly watch out for those webinars in time to come. Today was about sharing with you our thoughts, sharing with you to some extent where we see the different levels of maturity around cloud with our customers, and I believe we did a pretty good job there. We are very respectful of the continent. Our setup is very diverse. You saw earlier that, or from the slide as well, that we have a responsibility to the continent. In fact, just today, right now, live, we are hosting an event in Tembisa, which is a rural township here in South Africa, where close to 80 students are being trained free of charge, or rather one could say free training on cybersecurity, and the goal is to eventually educate them to a level where they are employable and work with our customers and partners to bring them into the system. So, it's over and above talking technology, it's also our duty to share with you some of that feedback. So I'll end off here, and thank you once again. I'll hand over to my co-host Marianne to share a few final words, and once again, feel free to reach out to us when, if anything is required.
Thank you so much, Pankaj, and thank you to all our customers, our partners joining us from everywhere in Africa. Again, thank you, and it's such a proud moment to be a field marketing manager for Checkpoint in Africa today, away from the cloud security event that we're having now. Just to reiterate what Pankaj said, we are live in Tembisa with our Jumpstart program, and I look forward to inviting you to more of our sessions in Africa with our customers, with our partners, and stay tuned and have yourself a very great afternoon. Thank you.
Welcome to our new work. With remote work is the new standard, organizations' attack surface is becoming wider. Countering the growing danger requires organizations to recalibrate their cybersecurity strategy. A complete protection calls for multifaceted solutions. Solutions that deliver security against Gen 5 zero-day attacks, that are easy to deploy and manage, that can eliminate patchwork security architectures and high TCO with integration and interoperability. In this new normal, we want to be able to do everything, everywhere. Our devices, privacy, and data must be protected wherever we connect from, whatever we connect to. To achieve it, we follow these core principles. 1. Prevention first. 2. Gold standard management. 3. Consolidation. And this is how we do it. Quantum, with advanced autonomous threat prevention, the ability to manage from the cloud, and improved IoT protection. These gateways are the best at protecting data centers and perimeter. CloudGuard, thanks to the pioneering AppSec, workload protection, and the successful award-winning partnership with Azure Cloud. CloudGuard is proving to be the ultimate solution for cloud security practitioners and cloud DevOps. Harmony, the most comprehensive security solution for remote employees, couldn't be more timely. Harmony introduces a revolutionary approach to securing end-user devices and remote access. From day one, Checkpoint set the standard for cybersecurity. What opportunities lie in the new world ahead?